Hi, I'm Amber Boyers. I'm the director and founder of Baiia Swimwear, and we're all about making women feel incredible in a swimsuit while honouring sustainable practice. And so when I think of a garment that I think has the most potential to change how a woman sees herself, I think a swimsuit is really unique. You know, it's the only garment that demands a woman show up half naked in public and feel confident. Hey, feel sexy. But it's a really vulnerable position to put a woman in. And so it's like, how can we take the equivalent of like a power suit and put it in a swimsuit? And that for me was instrumental when I realized that. And I was like, if I can change how a woman feels in her most vulnerable state, which again is in a swimsuit for a lot of women, imagine how else they can show up in the rest of their lives. And that kind of impact that has, the little trickle effect of she's now so much more of a confident mother for her daughter, and so on and so forth. Using different women, different ethnicities, different body shapes. It's really just trying to reinforce this, like, hey, listen, look how different we all are, you know, and that just creates such a sense of acceptance for your differences. You know, you have women from different countries, you have women of different shapes, of different sizes, with birthmarks, different hair, different everything. It was really to normalize the fact that everyone is so different. And if you can accept all those little different parts of you, it just makes you feel like you can build that relationship with yourself that you've always wanted to. So the swimsuits are actually created out of recycled rubbish from the ocean. What's really beautiful in that is that, you know, it's not a beautiful topic, the fact that there's plastic in the ocean, but a lot of the plastic in the ocean can be regenerated into a fabric that can just continuously be used over and over. So you can keep melting it down and create a brand new fabric out of it, essentially. So what we're doing is we're collecting all of this rubbish that would once just cause havoc in our oceans and our planet, and regenerating it into something brand new and something really sturdy and high quality. Again, like, the durability of the fabric is really important to us because that again lends a hand to sustainability. But yeah, we're taking that rubbish and we're creating a really great fabric from it. And from that fabric, we're actually in the design process thinking about how can we create something that will not only be here now, but in 10 years. And same with the style and the trend. It's not a fad. We're not creating prints that are here today and gone tomorrow, but how can we really go full circle with this and take something that is otherwise hurting our planet and then creating something that hopefully helps women feel like their best self. I had like $2,000 savings. I put $1,000 aside to somehow fund my first order of stock. And I was really lucky because about the same time that I kind of came up with the name for the brand, my university sent out an email to all previous students saying, hey, if you have a really good social good idea, put it forth. There's a competition going, you could win a bit of money. I put this little thing together, entered, and I was one of the finalists and I won $2,000. So I was like, okay, that's like a sign from the universe for me to really put this thing into action. And more than that, it was really like, yes, it was the money, which was a lot to me back then, because again, I didn't have a lot, but it was that validation that someone could see what I was thinking of and going, yeah, there's something behind that, which really gave me the confidence to go ahead. So that was 2016. Got a tiny little order from my suppliers at the time. And yeah, sometimes I look back and I don't even know how I just kept going because it was just such a nightmare. I look back and you're like, wow, how did that happen? But it's that real self-belief and just pushing through. I've never made a profit, at least in the first 2 years. It wasn't until 2018 where I got really clear with my numbers and I realized I was losing money. But I had 2 jobs at the time while I was starting the business. So that was fine. That kept funding the little passion project. And 2019, that's when I realized I wasn't making a profit. And once I really realized that and I got clear, and again, that was because of the help of other people, I was able to, you know, through connections, I met a strategist who helped me get clear on my numbers and advised me. And from 2019, I think it was June, was the first month I ever made a profit. And that was the first month I ever hired someone. So yeah, that's kind of how I got off running. I mean, there's a lot that happened between 2016 and 2019. And I think a lot of that I just try not to remember because it's a very isolating, really kind of frustrating experience that I'm sure a lot of women are going through, and entrepreneurialism is quite difficult. You never know if it's really going to pay off at the end of the day, if you're going to have a time when you can just stop and breathe and celebrate. But yeah, that's really how it started. So obviously I started alone, working a few jobs for a few years, just trying to get the business up and going, working one woman team. And then in 2019, I made my first virtual assistant hire, and she's still with us today, and then made my first physical hire, who is still with us today as well. And so for a good 2 years, it was really just us three. And then in the space of the last 2 years or year and a half, it's a team of, I think, 15. So it's grown a lot. I've just last week hired an operations manager, which was such a celebration for me because it gets, I'm in it every single day. Oh, how's that department going? How's this department going? And now I'm finally like, I've made this high level hire who's, it's just, I'm so excited for what next I can create in the business now that I'm not so consumed with the day-to-day operations. So I was very involved in the day-to-day operations not so long ago, and now I'm stepping back and looking at how we can continue to add value in so many different ways in the business. And I'm fortunate to be able to do that now, thanks to my team. Going in on a business on your own, or with anyone, but especially on your own, is, I think, an incredibly isolating experience. I think there's so much uncertainty that you're entering into, and it's a lot of pressure for one person to just wake up every day and deal with uncertainty after uncertainty, and sometimes not quite knowing when the light at the end of the tunnel is going to appear. So that was really difficult. But the biggest things that I would say is so important during that time is finding a community wherever you can that's really just going to help you with your way of seeing things and your mindset in those times, or just knowing that someone's there that you can kind of talk to, who kind of understands what you're going through. That was the biggest thing for me, because again, you're going to go through a really isolating period of your life where maybe the people you love most don't really understand why you're doing what you're doing. You don't understand why you're doing what you're doing most times. And if you can just find somewhat of a community that kind of gets what you're going through, and you can kind of turn to for a little bit of human support, I think that's really important during those times. So I joined an online program, and that was really instrumental for me, having access to ask for help. There were a lot of advisors or business advisors that you could book in a time with and speak to them, because any entrepreneur knows it can be very confusing at certain times, and you really just need to have someone you can ask a few questions to. So that was really why I joined that. And of course, the community was really important as well. There was a man who was a digital marketing strategist. He was one of the advisors. I decided to start working with him one-on-one. And from that commitment, that was really what got me going on the right track. That was what saw me get really clear on my numbers and my business and how to start hiring people, how to scale. So he was a real turning point. That was in 2019. So I don't think my business would have gone where it is today, or at least it wouldn't have happened in the amount of time. It may have taken another 15 or 20 years, but it wouldn't have been the success it is today in those few short years if it wasn't for those connections that I had, if it wasn't for the people that I just happened to meet. In some instances, yes. And I think it was more so because I had a swimwear brand, not so much like this cool industrial corporate, whatever it is that everyone else talk with, the hard, the lingo that's really hard to understand. It was more so, hi, I'm Amber and I sell bikinis. And no one really wants to take you seriously. It's like, oh, you and every other influencer out there. No one's really seeing the power of, actually, no, I really want to change how people feel about themselves in swimwear. There's a huge, people will say it's a saturated market, but if women are still showing up in swimwear feeling shame about themselves, well, then we're saturating the wrong part of the market. Like, there's a lot of power in that. And so I think, I definitely had different maybe treatment or access to certain things at certain points. I think more so because of the nature of my business. But I'm very fortunate to live in a country where I think there's very little, for me anyway, there was little discrimination in the industry I'm in. Maybe in big tech, I have friends who work in construction who are women, and they face very different treatment being a female. But I was very fortunate that swimwear and fashion, not so much. I experienced having to wait till I was a certain size where I could actually fully take advantage of the resources that were available. I think one, for me, it was just like, you can be a small business or a one-woman team. You actually just don't have the time to find the resources. And especially with government grants, like I never had the time to fill those things in. I didn't even know whether I'd be approved. It just isn't, you don't have the time, unfortunately. Now I can sit back, and I've got agencies who actively go and look for the grants that can keep helping, and they've, apply for those things. I'm so fortunate. But yeah, I know that there's definitely a disparity in terms of like what size you are and how seriously you're taken. And it's really difficult because it's almost like these guys need it the most, really, because then they get stuck in a hamster wheel of not having access to the resources that they need to grow, to then be taken seriously, and then to then have access to the resources. So yeah, it's really unfortunate. You don't know what you're doing a lot of the time. You just have to, okay, today I'm just going to throw myself out there and see what happens. Oh, it didn't work. Try again tomorrow. You're going back and forth. You don't really know who to go to access any kind of assistance. There's the supply issues. There's, things show up that's not at all what you ordered. There's a lot of loss of money, a lot of loss of time. There's just all these big things to really navigate. And again, like I always go back to, I think the biggest thing is having that community, because it's one thing to have mindset and try and get yourself into a zone and a state where you're, okay, this is what's happening to me right now. I'm just going to try and observe and not react too much. But it's very hard to do if you don't have kind of like a community around you, or just one person at least, where you can kind of go and know that someone's understanding what you're going through. You can kind of soundboard things through and go, hey, this is how I'm feeling today. This is what's going on. And just having someone offer their support to you, whether that's a friend, whether that's a business community, whether that's a mentor. If you find, lucky enough to find one, often they're very difficult to find as well. You don't know where to ask for that kind of access. So there's a lot of challenges. I think I block them out because I'm like, oh, I don't want to remember that time of my life. But yeah, there's a lot of challenges. And I just know what got me through was being so lucky to have that friend there at that time, or having that community that I could access, or someone that I could speak to. Yeah. Like, obviously the work that you guys are doing is huge, because it really is one of those things where no one really, it's not called on anyone at any point of their day in a Western country to stop and really go, hang on, what are like I look at myself and I go, yes, I'm very tenacious. Yes, I'm driven. A lot of my success, it was a lot of my actions, but so much of that was just right place, right time. And some people in some countries will never have that, unfortunately, just never will. And so I think women who are in those countries, like, my hat goes off to them tenfold, because of how far behind they have to start, out of reasons completely beyond their own control, not only for being in the country that they're in and having the lack of access to the right resources, but also for being a woman. And then, of course, even the women who come to these countries, as I saw with my mum, like, she didn't grow up with a lot of friends or connection around her. And that's just purely because they're all in a different country, and that impacts your ability to go and make those networks as well. So it's, yeah, I think women who come from those backgrounds, they definitely have to work twice, if not 10 times as hard. So my hat goes off to them, and to you guys for helping them. I feel the responsibility as a woman entrepreneur, due to the fact that I am experiencing the success that I have now, but I feel the responsibility to somehow share that success, or at least look at the success that I'm experiencing off the back of opportunities that I received, and somehow with that success create opportunities for the women who didn't receive the same. Backing women entrepreneurs is the best thing we can do for the world at the moment.